Hello, and welcome to another episode of Kill the Small Talk, and I'm your host, Alex Caron. On this podcast, I bring in guests from all walks of the entertainment industry, and we get down to the nuts and bolts. On this episode, I'm talking to a longtime friend, collaborator, director, and cinematographer, Adrian Hernandez, which we recently made a short film together called Little Boy. Here's the interview. Enjoy. Well, good morning, Adrian.
Hey, good morning, Alex. How's it going?
It's going. We're surviving. We're thriving. I'm a bit sleepy. I
was going to say somebody had a big birthday over the weekend.
Yeah, that's right. 31, but I still feel 21,
Hey.
just with back pain.
Well, I hope you had a fantastic party and that sort of thing. What'd y'all do? Was it just kind of like a fun little gathering?
Yeah, it was just a fun gathering. Mostly friends came over, had some family, and everyone brought food and drinks, and I spent all day cleaning the entire house for us just to mess it up once again.
Birthday fun.
Oh yeah, that's the privilege of hosting your own parties. But yeah, it was great. We were playing games. We were playing Uno and played like drinking games, and I think everyone left like around 2:30 in the morning.
Damn, you
So I
guys
didn't go
went
to bed
late.
till like 3:30. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to cancel my gym training session. I was like, dude, I cannot come in. I slept like 4 hours. He was like, no worries, man. Happy birthday. Get your rest.
You're hitting double the gym tomorrow. That's how
yeah.
it balances out. Yeah.
Dude, where do we find you? Where are you, by the way?
Yeah, I'm just in my bedroom right now. Managed to find a nice time of the day where things weren't too crazy, so I'm coming in nice and clear. And had this nice, beautiful midday light coming through and that sort of a thing. I work in camera and lighting, so I pay attention to the optimal camera and lighting position.
Well, as you've learned and as you've known me these last 5 years, like I told Robbie, our producer, that's why I hire technical guys like yourselves, because I don't know shit. Well, I'm learning.
Do you want to?
But that's why I have you on today, so I can learn, and people who want to make films and shoot things can also know what that's all about.
Hell yeah!
So let's go back 30
Sure.
years ago. No, you're not.
Nice. I was going to say I'm 29, so it'd have to be the day of my actual birth with my mother and father.
Came right out of the womb with a cannon.
To the camera going, absolutely.
Are we rolling? So what got your interest in filmmaking? Tell me a little bit about that. Like, how old were you?
Sure. So to give myself a bit of an introduction, my name's Adrian Hernandez. I've been a filmmaker and a cinematographer now for the better part of a decade, producing work at all different scales. I feel most comfortable behind a camera, and I love lighting things with interesting dramatic intention and making everything from horror films to period dramas, both behind the camera and also in the directing chair as well. On my end, what got it all started was my love of monster movies when I was young. I mean, they were sort of these cheap genre films. I mean, I'd watch everything from like The Leopard Man to old Godzilla movies. But with those films, there's a lot of imagination, a lot of creativity, a lot of craft that goes into it. And I was really inspired at a young age by that craft on display. When I was younger, I had a VHS tape, and it was the first Godzilla movie. And on the tape, they had a documentary about what they called suitmation, which was the process of, it was the Japanese term kind of colloquialized for getting a person in a giant rubber suit and making them look to a certain extent like a real monster.
Yeah.
And it was cool to learn about, even at a young age. I was like, oh, wow. So they shoot it really low. They film them in slow motion. They light them in certain ways to make them seem more menacing.
Right. Cast the shadows
And you're saying this is a job? Like, people can do this? And ever since then, it's always been an interest. In high school, I was directing plays. And in college, I had the opportunity to go to film school out here, which was really cool. And after film school, I've just been kind of working odd gigs in camera.
But where did that?
Biggest thing I've got.
Uh huh.
Oh,
No,
go for it.
go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, biggest thing I've got on my rap sheet right now is a PBS doc that was really cool to be a part
That's
of and
right.
that sort of a thing. Yeah.
But where did that all start from? Like, were your like are your parents movie lovers? Are your siblings like Did you guys all watch movies together growing up? And
I distinctly remember we had a video store not too far from our house, and I developed kind of like a rapport with the video guy. So he was a horror fan as well as myself at a young age, and I would walk over and ask him what horror movies were the best ones to rent, and he would just let me rent these rated R horror movies and kind of bring them home, which was terrible, I'm sure, for my developing brain, but great in
but
regards to
yeah,
expanding my interest as a filmmaker. Um,
that's what I say about because I was about 9 years old, and I remember I was uh, with my dad at my grandfather's place. I was feeling really sick, and he was like, "I'm gonna put on this movie for you. It's by Mel Brooks. It's called Blazing Saddles. Have fun." I was like,
oh
"Okay."
wow.
Looking back, I'm like, "Wait a minute, my dad let me see that movie at 9 years old." But then I'm like, "But it was that movie that made me really interested in wanting to be a comedic performer, comedic actor." So
And a fantastic first kind of day one to start with in terms of study. Yeah, I mean, a very similar thing to you. My family was also interested in filmmaking. My mother in particular had a love of horror movies as well. So she was watching all of these films often with me, Friday the 13th, Freddy Krueger,
yeah, all the
and really just
slasher.
took them as fantasy and fun. And some of my favorite memories of me and my mom are just kind of like us watching films together on cheap VHS tapes from a rental store.
Yep. Yeah, dude. Yeah, you and I think both had the privilege to kind of live a little bit of the '90s when everything was VHS, and you go to your local Blockbuster, and that was us every weekend. Uh, but I also remember like when we would like rent movies or just watch the movies that we had at home. My dad and I would purposefully watch the making of the film before we actually started it. And then
That's
we would talk,
interesting.
and then we would talk back like, oh yeah, they mentioned that earlier, and that, oh, I see how they did that, and and it all, kind of connected. So, yeah, my love for movies, and then my love for like, being part of like making movies was because of that, that early stage of watching all the, behind the scenes of how it was made, which I find fun and fascinating.
Same here. It's also like when I think about that early video store culture in particular, I miss going around in those stores and seeing all of these like beautiful pieces of art on display from films I'd never heard of. And oftentimes I would go in maybe wanting one film and find two or three others that I would find captivating and just be like, oh my good, I can get this, I can get this, I can get this. I feel like that experience is sort of lost in streaming now. You get these little, tiles, but they slide so fast around and you don't really get that experience of discovering a movie anymore. It's all kind of like targeted right at you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, man. Where So you went to USC, right? And you graduated 2018, right, with a
That's
degree
right.
in film and television.
Yeah, and I went through that program there, and that was kind of a combination of the basics, just sort of like, learning camera, learning lighting, that sort of a thing, editing, but also like fundamentals of storytelling in film in
Hmm.
particular. And it was a valuable experience. It was nice to be among a community of filmmakers, and I felt like my craft really kind of grew at that time. I had the opportunity to go on a scholarship, which was fantastic. So, I ended up walking out and, having an ability to then kind of work and freelance for a
Hmm.
while before finding myself in a few different kind of odd gigs here and there while making my own films happen.
And you started in documentary first, right, before you kind of switched a little more to towards narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I had ran a gambit of projects.
Mm-hmm.
During school, I'd shot everything from like narrative work to like, short documentary pieces. When I got out of school, I got hired on a small television show that no longer exists, it was called,
What was that show?
It's called
Okay.
SoCal Prep Insider on Fox Sports, West. And it was a show about like Division I athletics, which I just have
Mm-hmm.
no personal attachment to, but it was an interesting way to start, kind of shooting.
Yeah.
And what was nice was I held a camera, and it was a gig. Basically, we would show up to these Friday night football games and interview these Division I athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Division I, for people who aren't familiar, that's like, emerging high school performers who are basically like within a few years probably going to be either shortlisted or drafted for the NFL.
Right.
And they were hella impressive. I mean, from even a young age, you were seeing some of these kids play, and you were basically watching the future pros. It was a really
Gosh.
interesting kind of world to
Do you remember?
see and dissect.
Do you remember which one of those guys later became like super, big?
Off the top of my head, I don't follow sports enough to be able to pick it up, but some of the schools were kind of like directly funneling for
Mm-hmm.
the NFL, things like Modern Day, that sort of a thing. These kind of like big sports high schools where like football is just all they do, like all day, and that sort of a thing. They have other sports, but football is kind of like the culture
I
there,
mean,
which was an
yeah.
interesting culture shock as well.
Okay, and then so you graduate USC. Uh, before you went to school, did you? Because I feel like you've already had just kind of a well-rounded knowledge of filmmaking before you went to USC, right? And then USC was just kind of the place where you would, maybe network with other filmmakers. But then the real school is working in the actual field. I mean, I went to Theater of Arts, which is an acting conservatory here in LA, and I learned a lot. I definitely did, and I use a lot of the same techniques and methods that I use, today. But, dude, I didn't. I feel like like the real school for me was when you and I made our short film together. Which actually, fun fact, so Little Boy, for our listeners, Little Boy is a short film Adrian and I made based on my relative who was the tail gunner and photographer on the B-29, the Enola Gay, which is the plane that dropped the first atomic bomb in Hiroshima, Japan on August 6th, 1945, marking
And we
today
happen to
the 80th
be
anniversary.
Yeah, we happen to be recording on this exact day. Did we plan this at all, or was it
Coincidence?
just
No.
wow?
No.
It's very impressive.
This
I
is not
remember
planned.
in our research process, we'd also found that Bob Caron, your ancestor's father, also passed away on August 6th. So that day was just kind of one that kept sort of marking itself in his life as it sort of progressed, which is
And then my
really
birthday the
interesting.
day before.
Yeah. It's there's synchronicities there. There's synchronicities there. I guess to give people a more complete background, I know Alex from a number of shoots that we've done over the years, and also being friends. But we had the opportunity, to work on a short film together that we recently completed, and as of the recording of this podcast, I'm going to say is now publicly available to be consumed and that sort of a thing. We're going to be uploading it finally to the interwebs, and you can sort of watch the film afterwards. But the film is about, as Alex was saying, the perspective of the American airmen who witnessed the bombing of Hiroshima from the tail
Hmm.
gun of the Enola Gay plane. We first became aware of the story through Alex's personal connection with it, newspaper articles,
Yep.
family that had informed him. Alex's ancestor wrote a memoir about his experience, co-wrote it with a fabulous woman named Charlotte Mears.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
What's
from
the
there became, yeah, the book is called Fire of a Thousand Suns.
right?
And that became the impetus for us to just consume as much existing material as possible from the many interviews and testimonies and, articles
Documentaries. Yep.
that he not only participated in, but also that were made about this particular incident and that sort of a thing. The film runs 16 minutes long and is about as faithful as possible to his perspective,
Yep.
down to the colors that he witnessed that particular day. You also play your ancestor in the film, the lead character, Bob Caron, which is a fascinating experience. Can you tell the audience sort of what that was like to kind of embody your ancestor?
Yeah, sure. Well, to backtrack a little bit, about maybe 7 years ago now, 2018. The theater arts conservatory that I went to, I was talking to one of my professors, Nicolette Chaffee, and at the time it was such a small class. I think my term was like 3 students at the time, and 2 of the other students did not show up to class, and I was the only one there. So she was like, you can either, leave early or we can talk for an hour, up to you. And I was like, you're nice. You're a lovely person to speak to. I would love to talk to you for an hour. So we did. And her family's from England, and I was talking to her about her family and where she grew up. And then she asked me, and somehow the conversation came up that I am related to George Robert Caron. And I gave her the backstory of who he was and what he was involved with, and she was like, "Oh my God, Alex, you are literally sitting on gold." She's like, "You have no idea your connection that is so powerful to this family," and she's like, "I could see this turning into like a one-man show or a short film or even a feature." She's like, "You really have something in the back of your pocket." She's like, "That you probably don't even need to ask for permission because you guys share the same fucking last name." And I was like, "Oh my God, you're right." And then I remember not too long after that, the pandemic hit. And I was just kind of sitting with that thought of this idea to turn his story into some kind of performance, and I was watching documentaries all while COVID is happening, and I remember I was I dove so deep into his story and just everything that was involved with that. And while the pandemic was happening too, I remember I'm like, I need a break. This is too dark. The world is dark right now. Literally, people are, dying left and right. Like, it was just too much for me to handle. So I just kind of set it aside. And then you and I met, I think it was in 2021, for our mutual friend Layla for her music video. And you were shooting it, and I was the astronaut alien love interest. And I remember getting along with you very well, and I was just picking your brain about what kind of camera you were using and all that stuff, and then we just hit it off. And then sometime later I brought it up to you that I'm connected to Bob, and then you were really intrigued in telling these kinds of stories, because I read on your website that that your personal work focuses on like outcasts in the system that like alienates them, like the sort of underdog, right? And you felt that Bob had this sort of underdog tone to his story, right?
Yeah, I mean, history is plagued with this thesis of great man theory, right? The idea that the only perspectives that matter in historical account are the ones that in theory move and shape. But there are common people as well who live through these experiences on a number of different kind of like levels. And
Totally.
for me, Bob felt like he was the quintessential American, at the very least, perspective on this from a civilian perspective. Suddenly being thrown into a conflict much, much larger than themselves, and through the proxy of being identified as an American, now being in some ways responsible for the unleashing of nuclear devastation. Wrestling with that and the ethics of it, with Footprint Abroad. I mean, it was, meaty material, and I love stories that are set in
Hmm.
antiquity. I've told stories about people who kind of narrowly avoided the Holocaust in the
Yeah.
1940s. I've told stories about, foster care facilities in the 80s. I just wrapped up a recent project set in 1915 about or based on a true story about a woman who faked a writing partnership with a ghost. I want to make a film about the gold rush next. Like, antiquity is always the thing that really attracts me. I think the old world is just much more interesting than our own in so many ways. And this particular story, I thought, had a lot of connection to experiences in not only my own life, but like ones that a general audience would also be able to identify. It's also just a very unique perspective on history. The idea that you get like an infantryman's, like, basically minute per minute account of like what this experience was like,
Yeah.
was an incredibly attractive story to tell, just because I hadn't really heard it before. Obviously, it's an
Yeah.
American story, and the impact far outweighs just the American perspective. But it was a perspective that also in the historical record had been almost forgotten. And
Hmm.
I love the idea of telling stories about forgotten people or forgotten stories. And that kind of became very attractive to me as well.
Yeah, no, well said, man. And I after because Adrian and I had a couple of private screenings that were back to back, and I remember some of the audience members coming up to me and telling me how like they knew that the United States had dropped these bombs almost 100 years ago, but didn't know, the devastation or the details of the story, and most people were like, I didn't even realize how young these kids were. These guys were in their like 20s. You know, Bob, my relative at the time was, I believe he was 25 or 26, and then Captain Paul Tibbets was 30. My current age. So, yeah, these guys were young and just thrown into this, world. But a lot of them did feel the sort of patriotism with the, surrounding, growing fascism in Germany, and then with the rising, power and imperial power in Japan, and so they a lot of them felt like, like this was our duty to, to protect the vulnerable, and to protect, ourselves and the rest of the world, and so yeah, these
What
these
what
kids were
what
young.
what intrigues me about that is that your character in our short film uh, has a moment where those values, which were held by pretty much everyone on that plane, was tested in a very provocative way.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, to say all those things at the start of a mission is one thing, but to really hold those values after witnessing innocent lives taken in the process is, a dramatic reality that a lot of infantry people and airmen kind of live through, especially if they participate in bombing campaigns. I remember, in Paul Tibbets' memoir, he was the pilot of the Enola Gay, which
Uh-huh.
dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Um, he talked about the kind of grid-like manner in which he had to view the places that he was bombing. I mean, he thought of them as latitudes and longitudes because it became overwhelming to think of them as people. And I think America has participated in some of that. And it's interesting to kind of put a human face to this question of war and its impact, and to really ask, is this suffering worth it?
Uh-huh.
Especially with
100%.
so much going on in the world now.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Let's talk about making it. Uh,
Sure, sure.
what were your thoughts? What were your first thoughts when I brought up the idea to you that I wanted to turn this into some sort of performance? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, at that point, it was kind of an abstraction of like, I want to do something with this. I have this material that is intriguing with it, and I have a unique family connection with it. And my first thought was like, wow, I've always wanted to tell a story specifically about Hiroshima. Like I said, my interest in filmmaking burgeoned from witnessing the atomic age monster movies from
Hmm.
Japan. And all of those films are really about that bomb trauma. So, of all things,
Right.
strangely, I grew up witnessing that imagery and being, in some ways, somewhat connected to it. And it was kind of at the bedrock of my filmmaking interest. Um, I immediately was like, how in the world are we going to pull this off? They don't just have B-29 bombers sitting around, do they? And then
No.
sure enough, we, in the process of developing the script and looking into potential places to shoot, managed to find the fabulous Marchfield Air Museum in Riverside, who were fantastic and completely
Hmm.
understood our goal of presenting the
Yeah.
history and wanting to present a first person narrative. Um,
And do you remember
and
going in? Do you remember going in and us bringing? We brought like a we brought. I can't. I don't remember which number of drafts we went through by that point. It might have been three or four. So we were like almost done. We brought in the script. We brought in the book. We brought in some other materials. We walked in, told them who we are, what we're doing, and remember just seeing the light bulbs just flash on their heads like, oh my God, you're related to Bob. Like they all knew who he was or knew
I
of
was
him.
Yeah, I was gonna say at the Marchfield Air Museum, obviously
Yeah.
it's an air museum, so everyone there is well versed in aviation history, and immediately this like factor of Bob Caron. I mean, the people that flew the Enola Gay was a factor of academic and historical
Hmm.
curiosity then, and they latched onto the project immediately. They cut us a really discounted rate for the plane, which managed
Oh,
to make
yeah.
the film possible. So we shot the film in a real B-29 bomber because of the Marchfield Air Museum's support of the film, and they were absolutely fantastic to work with. And we shot a single 8-hour day in the plane, and then we had to build a tail gun seat for your scenes where you witness the bombing from afar. And that was a process as well of kind of building that and getting it as close as possible to the real kind of tail gun seat.
Yeah. Dude, I remember there was a moment where so we arrived, we kind of set up I think what was our call time? Like seven?
Yeah.
7 a.m. We arrived at
Mm.
7. It was already kind of warm, but it wasn't, there's still a little bit of that morning, dew and breeze and we kind of set up the tables. My uncle Tom and Aunt Janice were very kind enough to let us borrow their tables and chairs for us to use, and we set them under the wings of the plane. And I just remember feeling the adrenaline and nervousness, but it was good nerves. It was, this is actually happening. This is day one. I can't believe this is happening. Look at all these people doing, doing their jobs and doing great at it and just and being involved in that, man. Like you and Adrian, who was the assistant director, both gave, kind of speeches, and I remember feeling extremely nervous, almost out of words. I didn't know, what to say just because of how excited I was to be involved and to be there and to, witness everything happening on that day. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
was gonna say it was a really cool experience. I hadn't shot on a historical site like that before. I'd always kind of made through set
Hmm.
construction, things that look similar. So it presented a lot of logistical challenges. I mean, it looks amazing in the film, but it was hot as hell. Turns out these were, pressurized cabins. In these B-29s that were by then kind of like state of the art.
State of the
That's why
art, right?
like
At that time, yeah.
Yeah, B-29 pilots and crew people didn't wear the jackets with the fur that you
Right.
typically see just because they didn't need it because the cabins were pressurized.
Hmm.
Now, the issue, of course, is that when you're shooting a B-29 bomber on a tarmac in the middle of, the spring, especially a California spring, the heat quickly becomes a factor. So we shot all the scenes in the back of the plane first
Hmm.
and got that all square. And then right after that, we moved over to the front of the plane. And by the time we were ending the back of the plane sequences, it was pretty damn hot in there.
It was scorching.
Not to the point where it was like unbearable or people would get some kind of like, heat faint or heat sickness, but we had fans for everybody. We were wiping sweat constantly from people. And
Yeah.
then the moment that we were done with that dialogue, I was like, okay, everyone to the front. And then we, like military people, essentially funneled down the plane and then moved right up to the front of the
Seriously.
plane. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was a
thankfully there
pretty
were no
involved.
makeup or prosthetics involved.
Yeah, it would have been a nightmare from a just powdering perspective, keeping all of that square. So, we had the privilege then of shooting both in the tail of the plane, the midsection of the plane, and then
Hmm.
also the nose of the plane. We also had a shot in the tube of the plane, which was the
We
place where the
did.
front would
Yeah.
connect with the
Yep.
back, which was very cool. Yeah, shooting on a
No, it was
historical
not
site
cool.
like
It was
that.
hot. It was hot as
Swelter.
hell, man. It was
Yeah,
sweltering.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you can actually see legit, sweat. You could see the sweat on my face, but we used it to our advantage in the next shots that we got when Bob is contemplating and thinking about all the logistics and all the math and all the science behind what they're going to do that day
Yeah, there's a
before.
moment there's a moment where he's kind of bearing his soul for kind of what he's realizing about this bomb that had been explained in round terms, but they hadn't used the word atomic, and
Hmm.
the extent of the devastation they were going to witness hadn't, for reasons of security, been disclosed. So once he realizes just what they're carrying, he starts sweating and that sort of a thing. And we worked it into the drama of the piece because Alex was sweating in the footage that we captured on the day, which, happens, and you just kind of find a workaround. And luckily we managed to find a solution that worked.
Yeah, we did, man. Yeah, one of my absolute favorite shots that we got is when we used the projector and you could see the reflection of the bomb on the welder's goggles, um, which I think you and I were talking about technically because of the angle, like in real life when that happened, they would have been far beyond the reflection of the bomb onto the goggles, but you and I both wanted to capture the essence of the front cover of the book that Bob wrote called Fire of a Thousand Suns, where it has a drawing of him with his goggles, and you could see the reflection of the bomb on both sides. We both
It
kind of
was
wanted to like
also
recreate that, right?
it was also a provocative image as well. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, what became interesting was like, keeping it so locked into his personal perspective, the way that the bomb starts, it's not just sort of the moment with the mushroom cloud, kind of like in the book. There's a whole like minute where he's just witnessing the flashing occurring. There's lights
Right.
shifting, as there would be. Basically, that entire sequence of the bombing occurs just from the perspective of that one vantage point. So you literally never leave his point of view as this is happening, and it's sort of one person, one kind of perspective trying to encapsulate the extent of devastation.
How did we get that shot again?
Yeah, it was pretty simple. I mean, we got the projector and we projected it onto a white piece of paper, and we just had you look at the reflection of that with these highly reflective welder's goggles. And then from there, in special effects, we managed to be able to like get it and exaggerate the level of kind of like
Hmm.
brightness to give it a more vivid sense. But we managed to capture, I think, a really solid image there.
Right. Especially because it's a sepia tone, right? So you really needed to see those the lights changing even more so, right? If it had been, in color,
Yeah, so the
right?
movie, as shot, is sort of a tribute to vintage flight films that you'd see. Films like, Wings or Hell's Angels and that sort of a thing. So the entire film is presented in sepia, except for one moment where the bomb goes off, and in that moment we break from the sepia to
Hmm.
monobaths that elucidate colors that are basically the colors that he describes in his testimony, down to like it was red, and then it was purple, and then it was blue, and then it was
Yep.
white, and then it was like, so that sequence of color and that like shift in the difference of color kind of became important to really mark the occasion of the bomb dropping. The idea is that the atomic bomb weighs so much within the narrative of the film that it breaks the film form itself.
Right. And you also have a background in sound design. For our listeners that don't know what sound design is, can you maybe elaborate on that, because that will lead me into my next question about our film.
Sure. So sound design is, I think, a way that it was explained to me a while ago is apt to bring up at this point. Sound design is essentially the process of making all of the sounds that you hear in the real world when you put a glass down, when you drink water, and that sort of a
Hmm.
thing. When you crack a whip or what have you, to make that sound as rich and kind of story based as possible. So something like, for instance, a lightsaber in a Star Wars movie, that is not sound that's recorded on the day, but rather sound that's presented externally in the post
Hmm.
production process, and usually with some kind of tie to stories. So, like, a good example would be in Star Wars A New Hope. The villain's lightsaber has a sort of like low end, like craggly timbre, and the hero's lightsaber has a fine, kind of like,
Hmm.
swift and sharp timbre. And those two different sounds that are applied in post production for those lightsabers inform character and give a sense of the world of the film.
Hmm.
So it's basically post production sound for enhancing narrative. And it includes things like sound effects, Foley, where they kind of like pretend to do sound along with the picture to get various kind of sounds that might sound a little richer, what have you. And then there's also another process called sound mixing, where you take all of those sound elements and make them feel as if they're in world, to kind of give them reverb and to
Hmm.
equalize them, to make them feel as if they're like living. So if there's a Tyrannosaurus Rex stomp, you want it to sound big and echoey. That process of making it sound big and echoey is the sound mixing process. The process of attaining the elephant footstep or whatever you might be
Hmm.
using to get the Tyrannosaurus Rex stomp, that's the sound design process.
Gotcha. Well, I already knew that, but I wanted to bring up the sound design of our project in Little Boy, because I remember early on, because I've got a background in music, and I play drums and a little bit guitar, and at the time I had been thinking about wanting to have this sort of music in the background to help continue telling the story. And when I brought that up to you, you were interested, but I remember you saying like, well, right now we're still in kind of, we were in production, and you're like, let me sort of focus on, what's in front of me now, and then we'll, kind of think about that. And, so tell me, what were you thinking in sound design for our film? Had you like, did you like initially maybe want some music, or you really, I think you what you brought up to me was that you really wanted to focus on the sort of sound design in the plane itself, and like the sound of the bomb, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked on films that run a wide gambit. So some films that are predominantly soundtrack oriented and some films that are predominantly sound design oriented. For me, considering the industrial space, considering the manner in which perspective played so much of a role, I really saw this predominantly as a sound design led film with only maybe some music at the beginning and end, both of which we kind of sourced from public domain
Mm-hmm.
music that sort of existed on the internet in a free archive that I managed to find. And that music in particular that kind of bookends the movie would be something you typically find in a film of the era. And I thought it was interesting to kind of play it up for a kind of ironic effect. But for the most part, the music in the piece I thought would supersede the truth of it, which is the fact that it's so much about perspective. For me, hearing the sounds of the bomb in the distance, hearing the clacking of metal as this sort of large plane is moving through the turbines, that sort of a thing, became really attractive to me. He's stuck within
Mm-hmm.
a war engine larger than himself. And there's a way through design that you can emphasize something like that. A good point of comparison to something like that would probably be in the process of researching the sound design and the potential music.
Mm-hmm.
I rewatched that film Dunkirk in a theater, which was a fantastic viewing experience. But in the process of listening to the film, I was like, oh wow! Like for the planes in that movie, they're using things like eagle caws or like the sounds of like pigs squealing for various like
Oh.
gunshot effects.
Oh,
So for
interesting.
them, for him, it was important that the bird, not that the planes in that movie, Christopher Nolan, that the planes sounded like birds of prey. And,
Whoa.
whenever there was any sort of fire or action, what have you, he wanted it to sound as if it was kind of like animals at slaughter. And those intentions and those themes that he was drawing out, are fascinating and also play into elements of soundtrack as well.
Mm-hmm.
But there's about a million ways to sort of score and present a war movie, and some focus on perspective a little more than
Mm-hmm.
others. If you're
Right.
Terrence Malick, The Thin Red Line, you're predominantly doing narration. Most of that movie is just kind of the poetic musings of its own characters, and that is a form of sound design, voiceover, and not typically what you would expect from a war film, but it
No.
kind of creates this intimate perspective, which is really interesting. So
Right. Like
it's a
almost
lot
like, yeah,
of
writing in a diary, like a journal.
and there's a lot of interesting choices there that basically become the directing craft. It's like, well, you have the story, but how are you choosing to present that story? What are you really trying to say with the choices that you're making? And those kind of become, what the film essentially is about
Mm-hmm.
in that kind of bigger, broader sort of context.
And what was going through your head when you were, because I've had people ask me at the screenings, they're like, "Hey, was that intentional? Did he take out all the sound and noise on purpose? Sort of right when Thomas Farabee was the bombardier on the Enola Gay. So in that moment, our actor who our actor Max, who played Thomas, is told by Captain Tibbets to drop the bomb, and then from that moment it's just silence.
Yeah, I loved the idea that the only sounds that were produced in that moment where the film climaxes essentially with the dropping of the bomb were the sounds that Bob himself was producing. So you hear the sounds of his leather gloves kind of like
Mm-hmm.
curling and the sounds of his
Tapping.
breathing. And obviously there's so much more sound in the world going on, but in that one moment, I mean, I'm sure he could hear his heartbeat despite the giant B-29, plane around him. It's a question of that perspective again and keeping it as close to him as possible. And as I started to design it, I had a layer where we had some backgrounds and that sort of a thing. And I was like, no, it almost feels more kind of personal and intimate to his perspective if we close everything down to literally just his
Totally.
senses, his feelings, his touch, his eyes, what he's witnessing directly, what he's producing sound wise and hearing directly. It basically, the whole world just became his five senses. You know?
Oh yeah, and yeah, what a great choice you made because it really helped move the story forward. And it, when I go back and watch it, my heart palpitates. I'm like, oh shit, okay, I know what's gonna happen, but I'm still anticipating it, and it definitely helps create that like eeriness, right before the bomb is imploded onto the city. But yeah, man. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to make, and I can't wait for people to finally see it.
I was going to say we've completed our festival run and now it's available to the public and we get to bring Bob's story to the masses and have them kind of contemplate, his perspective and his impact and what it really means, I think, to be an American in moments where you might disagree with your country, which I think Bob's conflict, kind of communicates.
Right. Yeah. The idea of yeah, you can love your country and your countrymen, but have a distaste towards maybe your government's decisions.
Yeah, yeah. The idea is that a patriot is loving your country all of the time and your government when it deserves it. That's a Mark Twain quote. Don't quote me on that one. That's Mark Twain, but it's very provocative. And when I read that, when I was younger, I was like, yeah, that really is what being a patriot is. And I think he kind of hit
Yeah.
the nail on.
What movies are you watching these days? What takes your interest?
I mean, it's been a wide gambit. I watch everything from, films from Asia and films from Europe and French, Italian. I really try to widen my perspective. I also watch films from our lovely Los Angeles as well. And I'm quite excited, actually. I have a ticket to go catch the movie Weapons in a couple of days, and that's going to be a really interesting one. I've been seeing all the ads for that. Didn't like the first film that director made, but that particular movie looks really interesting and provocative.
Yeah, it's the horror film, right? I saw the trailer with the kids and they're like running down the street. Is that the one? The teacher like
Yeah,
loses the kids and the whole community like blames her for it. She's like, "No, there's like footage."
that's the thing
Right.
is, as I understand the setup, one day something like 20 kids disappear from a classroom
Mhm.
and it happens to all be the classroom from this one teacher.
Mhm.
And she's sitting there and she's like, I don't know what just happened. Like, I didn't have any involvement with this, but obviously with it being so centrifocalized, this small community starts to become very paranoid and starts to kind of come at her. So it's sort of up to her to clear her own name and investigate
Yeah.
just what happened with these kids. A friend of mine read a leaked script and said it was really interesting and provocative and he can't wait to see it. So I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I think the best film I've seen this year so far, I saw a film called Afternoons of Solitude.
Mhm.
It's a Spanish movie by a director that's really solid named Albert Serra. And his film is essentially a 2.5 hour documentary about the bullfighting scene in Spain as it kind of currently
Oh,
stands.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough subject matter and it's a very frank portrayal of that world. But what makes it provocative is kind of discovering this lead bullfighter that he's kind of centrifocalized on and why he's doing it in particular. There's like
Mhm.
deeper psychological reasons that aren't said out loud, but as you watch the footage and slowly start to understand who this man is, you start to see, oh, he's not just fighting the bull in the ring. There's like something else that's really kind of like working psychologically that is being kind of exercised through this weird, like ritualistic psychodrama with this large beast. It's a very provocative movie. I saw it. I was floored by it. To me, so far, it's kind of the best film that's come out this year.
Do you prefer streaming movies or do you prefer going to actual theater?
I prefer going to the theater. I think even dramas, very simple ones, the level of empathy I have in a scenario in which I'm kind of like not only forced to watch, but like witnessing them at such kind of these emotions at such large scale
Hmm.
is so totally different. I mean, it'd be the difference between looking at like that Guernica painting on your phone versus seeing it the size of a giant wall, right in front of you. You just have a very different emotional connection with the size of the image. I remember that difference was highlighted to me when I saw the movie Jaws as a kid, and I saw it on TV, and then years later when I saw it in the theater, the actual palpable fear you feel when that giant
Yeah.
like 20-foot shark jumps at you versus what you might see on a crappy television screen is so much more kind of
Hmm.
arresting. So for me, theater experience kind of comes number one. I've noticed that my movie watching for streaming has actually gone down, and my movie watching in theaters this year has gone up tremendously. So I'm really being drawn to that big screen experience.
That's what we got to do, man. That keep the theaters alive. I mean, I have so many great movies. I mean, great memories. Going to movie theaters as a kid before the streaming services, it came out. I have such a love for movies and just going to support them in person. And you're right, like seeing it on a giant silver screen, surrounded with a bunch of other people who are also watching it for the first time, and being able to witness their reaction and how they felt, and sort of eavesdropping in on the conversations, walking out of the theater, and I love it. But there was a time where I was feeling sort of scared to go out to the movies just because of like the like mass shootings that were happening. So there was a while where I wasn't going to the movie theaters at all, just because I felt so much anxiety. Just like ain't no way I'm gonna sit in the middle. You're sitting duck. I got to pick my seat next to the exit. I still do that to this day. I still will have
Yeah,
that little fear.
we're spoiled in LA with such fantastic movie theaters and such a rich movie culture. Because the reality is, for a lot of other theaters, especially located in different parts of the country, I mean, these are fairly rustic venues now that, could use some updated amenities.
Oh yeah.
It's this conversation between like America losing love for the theater post pandemic. And I know some people who still have never really gone back since that time. But I mean, on the other hand, you have some individuals, really fighting to kind of keep a big screen theatrical experience alive. And for certain movies that come out, there's still an audience that wants to go out and be a part of this big experience. I mean, recently F1 was a really great example,
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
fantastic. It's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. You got to watch it on a big screen if you're going to see it at all. If you can't catch it in IMAX, it's pretty much not worth catching. It's really funny. I was looking into going to just sort of be part of this big screen IMAX experience,
Hmm.
and I was like, well, what if I tried a standard? And then I looked, and the standard theaters were completely empty. IMAX theaters fully sold out. I
It's the
think
way to
if people are
go.
going to go to the theaters, exactly. If people are going to go to the theaters today, they're going to go for like a big screen experience, something they can't really kind of get at home.
Uh, Before we come to a close, I wanted to ask you, what makes you laugh? What are you watching? What are you listening to? Or what do you do, to help you sort of, I don't know, keep your mind off of things that are, just kind of going on in our day-to-day lives. Well, yeah, what makes you laugh?
Yeah, at the moment, we live in a world which is very complex and frequently throwing disappointment and dismay at us. But I think for me, what makes me laugh these days is my sense of dark humor. And I've been able to exercise it and find it in ways that are amusing and fun to me. What also makes me laugh is, being a part of the filmmaking process. I just wrapped up shooting a new short recently, and I have another one down the
Yeah,
pipeline I'm
that's
very excited
right.
about. Yeah, that are, very fun and kind of silly experiences that act as kind of a reprieve from a lot of the kind of bedlam and chaos in our world today.
Yeah, and I had the privilege to watch a little bit of a rough cut, so I can't wait till it's fully done and edited. Yeah, man. Hey, if people want to look you up and watch your films, where can they find you?
Sure. Right now, Instagram at Hernandez Media or my website, hernandezmedia.org. In the process of creating and putting films together and just sort of making projects that really sing. And the plan right now is to finish out a slate of shorts I have and start working towards a first feature, better part of next year. I have a concept that's very provocative, and I think it's going to come together in fruition for a really great time. So, that's kind of the best place to find the work at the moment. It's all kind of like disparate and sort of a bit everywhere. So I aggregate it on a portfolio site and you can kind of watch my work there.
Amazing. One final thing. For those who have an interest in filmmaking and movie making, what's one best piece of advice you feel like you can give to future filmmakers?
I just pick up the camera. It's so
Just
simple,
pick it up?
but
You don't
yeah,
even have
pick
to
it
press
up.
record?
Occasionally you might press record. You don't need to do it all the time. Not every single moment you want to record. No, it's a thing where there's so much infrastructure and people will sit around for years to try to make movies happen and kind of, reflect and ruminate on the films they could be making at a certain scale or size. But, the cavalry these days is getting smaller and smaller when they come. And the way that candidly we can kind of make movies nowadays is to try to make them as much as possible with resources that we have, at least at the start. And if you're a person starting out, then the idea of picking up a camera and just starting to film some things that you find interesting is the best place to start. I mean, if you're not doing that, you're just sort of talking about it. You know what I mean? You got to really begin that muscle of making films, kind of a regular habit. And, from there, you'll be able to then kind of build and every project kind of gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah. And you I feel like I mean, I've known you the last 5-6 years now, and I've definitely seen your progress grow from, music videos to, to documentaries to now, how many short films do you have out now?
Yeah, I have the better part of about 6, and then I'm hoping to make
6,
about
right?
2 more,
Right.
and yeah, and then
Before you
from
make your
there,
feature?
just kind of kind of growing it out and that sort of thing. So tune in a few years from now, and we'll have that conversation about that feature and that sort of a thing. But
Cool, man. Hey, listen, it's been a great hour getting to talk to you, dude. Yeah, again, for everyone listening, if you're interested in watching Adrian's work, you can go on to his Instagram at Adrian Hernandez Media, and then your website at adrianhernandezmedia.org, right? You have all your
HernandezMedia.org.
hernandezmedia.org. Yeah.
Adrian Hernandez Media is my cousin. What?
So many Adrians, man. You're like the 5th Adrian I have on my phone.
It's a thing. I got a lot of Hernandez's and a lot of Rodriguez's.
But not too many Carons.
That's true. That's true. French, Latin, Mexican fusion is not typically in there.
Unless you're in LA. But yeah, man, I appreciate you being on here. And oh yeah, our project, Little Boy, will be open to the public pretty soon up on YouTube.
Yeah, you'll just be able to type in Little Boy short film, and then from there you can see Alex doing what he does best.
Ditto.
All right.
Great, man. Yeah. Have a good rest of your day, dude. And thanks to everyone for listening. We'll see you later.
Not a problem. Lovely talking to you.
See you, man. Bye. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe so you'll get notifications when new episodes drop. Thanks to my guest, Adrian Hernandez. Music by Mark Fabian. Produced and engineered by Robert Altstriller. Recorded at Command Recording Studios. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Kill the Small Talk Podcast and at Command_Recording_Studios. We'll see you next time. Bye.